At exactly 10:47 every night, when the last office lights dimmed and expensive cars disappeared into the city streets, one exhausted father quietly walked through the revolving doors, carrying nothing more than a small backpack and an old lunch container. To everyone inside the towering glass building, he was simply another night janitor. Few people noticed him. No one knew that only an hour earlier he had been helping his 8-year-old daughter finish her homework, preparing tomorrow's school lunch, reading her a bedtime story over a video call with his elderly neighbor who watched her during the night, and then rushing across town just to make it to work before the clock struck 11. His name was Daniel Carter, a 36-year-old widower whose entire world revolved around one promise he had made beside his wife's hospital bed years before. He had promised that no matter how difficult life became, their daughter Lily would grow up, believing that kindness and hard work could overcome almost anything. Since that day, Daniel had worked construction, delivered groceries, repaired broken appliances, painted houses, and now spent every night cleaning one of the largest technology companies in the city. It wasn't glamorous, and it certainly wasn't easy. But every paycheck meant another month of rent, another pair of school shoes, another opportunity for Lily to dream bigger than the circumstances they lived in. The company Daniel cleaned was famous across the country. Its headquarters occupied 40 stories of glass and steel, filled with brilliant engineers, designers, executives, and investors. During the day, thousands of employees hurried through the halls, discussing billion-dollar projects and revolutionary ideas. At night, however, the building belonged to a handful of security guards and the quiet cleaning crew. Most janitors simply followed their assigned checklist before heading home. But Daniel had always been different. Ever since childhood, he possessed an unusual curiosity. Whenever something was broken, he couldn't ignore it. Whether it was a squeaky door, a flickering light, a loose cabinet hinge, or a malfunctioning coffee machine, he instinctively tried to understand how it worked. Years of repairing old household appliances to save money had turned him into a surprisingly skilled problem solver. He never claimed to be an engineer, but he believed every machine told a story if someone was patient enough to listen. One rainy Thursday evening, Daniel noticed something strange while cleaning the company's research floor. Employees had gone home frustrated after another failed day of testing an expensive automated storage system that moved confidential prototypes between laboratories. The machine had reportedly been malfunctioning for weeks, causing delays that cost the company hundreds of thousands of dollars. Warning signs surrounded the equipment, and maintenance reports were scattered across a nearby desk. Daniel had no intention of interfering. He simply swept around the area while listening carefully to the rhythmic clicking sounds coming from inside the system. Something about the pattern bothered him. The motor wasn't struggling. The sensors weren't completely failing. Instead, one small mechanical arm hesitated for less than half a second before every movement, creating a chain reaction that eventually stopped the entire system. To most people, the delay was invisible. To Daniel, who had spent years repairing worn-out machines with almost no resources, it sounded like a tiny cry for help. He quietly finished his cleaning duties but couldn't stop thinking about that strange hesitation. Long after midnight, while empty hallways echoed with silence, Daniel stood several feet away from the machine, studying every visible movement without touching a single component. He wasn't trying to fix it. He simply wanted to understand why such an advanced system could be defeated by something that sounded so incredibly small. Little did he know, hidden security cameras were recording every second of his quiet observation, and before sunrise, someone at the highest level of the company would become very interested in the mysterious night janitor who seemed to notice what entire engineering teams had somehow overlooked. The following evening, Daniel returned to work expecting another ordinary shift. Instead, he noticed several engineers gathered around the same automated storage system. Their expressions revealed exhaustion more than confidence. Laptops covered nearby tables, diagrams filled whiteboards, and countless diagnostic reports lay scattered across the room. Apparently, another full day of testing had ended in failure. As the employees packed their bags, one frustrated engineer muttered that the company had already hired outside consultants, software specialists, and equipment manufacturers, yet the mysterious malfunction continued to appear at random. Everyone eventually left, except the security guard making his final rounds. Once the floor became silent again, Daniel carefully resumed cleaning nearby offices. While emptying trash bins, he overheard two maintenance technicians discussing possible causes. Their conversation confirmed what Daniel had suspected the previous night. Everyone focused on rewriting software because they assumed the issue originated in the control system. Nobody seemed to question whether a tiny mechanical imperfection might be confusing perfectly functioning software. Daniel wrestled with himself for several minutes. He knew it wasn't his place to interfere. After all, he was only the janitor. Who would believe someone with no engineering degree? Still, ignoring the problem felt dishonest. Finally, he grabbed a sheet of scrap paper from a recycling bin and quietly sketched a simple diagram showing where he believed the hesitation occurred. Beneath the drawing, he wrote only one sentence. Maybe the software is responding correctly to a mechanical delay instead of causing it. He left the anonymous note beside the maintenance reports before continuing his shift. The next morning, the note caused unexpected confusion. Engineers debated whether someone had left a joke or an actual observation. Curiosity eventually won. They inspected the tiny mechanical arm mentioned in the sketch and discovered microscopic wear inside a low-cost bearing hidden beneath a protective cover. The damaged component shifted by less than 1 millimeter during operation, creating inconsistent timing signals that fooled the entire automated system into believing objects were misaligned. The replacement part cost less than $20. After weeks of expensive diagnostics, the machine suddenly performed flawlessly. Nobody could understand how such a simple mechanical issue had escaped countless experts. Even more mysterious was the anonymous note that had pointed directly toward the answer. News spread rapidly throughout the executive offices. The company's CEO, Eleanor Grant, was astonished. She had personally attended several meetings discussing the costly malfunction and knew how much time and money had already been wasted. Security footage was reviewed in hopes of identifying whoever had left the note. To everyone's surprise, the cameras showed only one person spending unusual time near the machine during the previous night. A quiet janitor wearing worn-out work boots who never crossed any restricted barriers, never touched the equipment, and simply watched the mechanism while finishing his cleaning duties. Eleanor asked for his employee file. There were no advanced degrees, no engineering experience listed, and no remarkable achievements. Just years of temporary jobs, glowing references describing him as honest and dependable, and a note indicating he never missed a shift despite raising his daughter alone. Rather than dismissing the discovery, the CEO made an unusual decision. She instructed her assistant not to tell anyone. Instead, she planned to visit the building personally during the night shift. She wanted to meet the janitor, whose careful observation had accomplished what some of the brightest specialists in the company could not. 3 nights later, while most of the city slept, Daniel quietly pushed his cleaning cart across the executive floor. As usual, he worked with careful attention, wiping fingerprints from glass walls, organizing chairs left behind after meetings, and even tightening loose cabinet handles that nobody else noticed. Around midnight, he heard soft footsteps behind him. Turning around, he found a professionally dressed woman standing alone in the hallway. Assuming she was working late, Daniel politely apologized if his vacuum cleaner had been too loud. The woman smiled warmly and introduced herself simply as Eleanor. She asked whether he had been the person who left the anonymous note near the automated storage system. Daniel hesitated, embarrassed rather than proud. He admitted he had only written down an observation because he thought it might save someone time. He quickly apologized if he had crossed any boundaries. Instead of correcting him, Eleanor began asking questions. Why had he suspected a mechanical issue? How had he recognized the unusual timing? Daniel explained that growing up with very little money forced him to repair almost everything instead of replacing it. Old washing machines, broken bicycles, leaking pipes, damaged refrigerators, squeaky doors. Years of necessity had trained him to listen carefully before reaching for tools. Machines often revealed their problems long before they completely failed. He simply paid attention. Eleanor listened silently as Daniel spoke with remarkable humility. He never claimed to be smarter than the engineers. He insisted they possessed knowledge he could never match. He had merely looked at the problem differently because his experiences were different. Only after nearly 20 minutes did Eleanor reveal the truth. She wasn't another late-night employee. She was the CEO of the entire company. Daniel froze, convinced he had unknowingly embarrassed himself. Instead, Eleanor thanked him. She explained that innovation rarely came from people who believed they already knew every answer. It came from individuals curious enough to notice details others overlooked. Over the following weeks, Daniel was invited to participate in maintenance meetings, not as an engineer, but as a practical problem-solving consultant. His observations repeatedly helped teams identify overlooked issues before they became expensive failures. The company soon offered to pay for technical education while promoting him into a full-time facilities innovation role. His salary nearly doubled, his schedule shifted to daytime hours, and for the first time since losing his wife, Daniel could eat breakfast with Lily every single morning before walking her to school. Months later, during the company's annual leadership conference, the CEO shared Daniel's story with thousands of employees. She reminded everyone that talent does not always arrive wearing an expensive suit or carrying an impressive title. Sometimes it pushes a cleaning cart through quiet hallways long after everyone else has gone home. The audience rose for a standing ovation as Daniel walked onto the stage, not because he had fixed an expensive machine, but because he had proven that character, curiosity, humility, and perseverance can transform an ordinary life into an extraordinary one. And as Lily proudly watched her father receive recognition he had never expected, she realized the promise he had made years earlier had come true. Kindness and hard work had not only carried them through their darkest days, they had opened a future brighter than either of them had ever imagined.